The door has been shut on young homeless people. That's according to youth development and social justice community organisation Kickback. They say the government's emergency housing system cuts have left them out in the cold, doing nothing to fix their lived experience. Hendry, who's the co-founder of Kickback, joins me now in the studio.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Aaron. Thanks for coming in this morning. So take us through the numbers and what you're actually seeing out there.
Look, we see more and more young people coming through our doors. We've got a front door service, crisis drop-in service on K Road. Young people who have been denied emergency accommodation, who are, as a result, are sleeping rough or in really dangerous situations.
So these are people who literally have nowhere else to go. Where are their families in all of this?
Look, youth homelessness is a real complex issue, right? And often young people who are at that point where they're facing sleeping on the street, they are coming from situations where they are unsafe, where they do not have safe or stable whānau they can fall back on. And so the decision the government has made to shut the emergency housing gateway has meant that more of our young people have ended up on the streets, have ended up in situations where their lives are at risk and they are being harmed.
Has it shut the gateway though? I thought they've obviously tightened up on how free they are with the money, because we had obviously an awful situation that we saw rise and rise during COVID, where more and more people were just being shoveled into emergency housing situations and hotels and motels and places like that, which weren't ideal either. So have they tightened things, or are they literally just saying...
Look, our experience and that of, I guess, many of my colleagues in the sector, and specifically, our young people, what they are telling us is that when they go into working income and they request that support, they are being denied and they are not getting support. We've got to ask, what is the criteria for young people to be able to access emergency housing when they are telling us we are sleeping on the street, our lives are at risk, we are in danger, and they're being told no? What do we want that there for?
So look, the numbers that we've seen in the really excellent Herald story today talk about the data at the end of June showing the number of applications had dropped significantly, which shows that we are sort of seeing a drop-off in demand as well, yeah? We are slowly fixing this problem?
Look, I mean, we would contest that. What we are seeing is more and more young people turning up in need of emergency housing, in need of support and shelter. Our concern is that when young people are going and getting that support, they're not getting it. And the message is getting out into the community that there is no support, you cannot get it.
Yeah, and literally there's no network, there's no relatives, there's no friends, there's no places that people can turn up to sort of, if they're in a tight spot?
Look, what Kickback does, our role is we support young people to explore every opportunity, and where we can get young people to return to whānau and support the whānau, that is always our first goal. But there is a group of our young people who are at high risk, who do not have those safe networks that they can go to, and without emergency accommodation, without an alternative to emergency accommodation, they are ending up in very dangerous situations.
Is this a new problem though?
It's a problem that has gone on for a very long time, but it has gotten worse. And the government's decisions over this period have increased the risk of young people seeking support and being denied that support.
So we're talking to the Prime Minister a little bit later this morning. If you had a quick fix, there probably isn't one, I'm guessing, but if you had some suggestions to make, what would be yours, given all the constraints that they face?
Look, there's some things that the government could do right now. One is they could roll back the emergency housing policy. If someone is at risk and their life is at risk and they need shelter, they should be able to access it. Two, they could immediately start to resource and fund an alternative model to the motel-based model. We agree that the motel-based model has not worked, it has caused harm, but instead of replacing that model, essentially the door has been shut and people have been harmed as a result. And the third thing they could do is start to implement duty to assist legislation. So legislation that would ensure that if someone turns up at work and income, that the state's role is clarified and that those people can get support and should be able to get as much support as the government has to ensure that people do not sleep on the street.
Is it just a money issue, do you think?
Look, it's both structural. We need to ensure we have the right kind of mechanisms within the law to protect our rights. So that's where the duty to assist legislation comes in. But also it is resourcing. We need to ensure that we have the right services in place to support people when they are in crisis. And right now, we are not doing a good enough job.
It's probably not just the only problem, right, homelessness. There'll be other issues going on there. So it's just giving people a roof over their heads going to be the end of it, though?
Look, that's a pretty good place to start, right? Housing is a basic human right and shelter is a basic human need. Human beings and our young people, our children, need to be inside. They need to have a roof over their head. It was pouring rain last night. Can you imagine sleeping out in that? There are kids out in the rain because of the decisions the government has made. And so yes, we do need to start with shelter, we do need to start with housing, but of course there's a lot of complexity in terms of mental health and addiction and disabilities and harm. And that is why we need to ensure that our people and our children have access to a place to live and a place to stay when they are in crisis, when they don't have anywhere else to go.
I guess that point, though, about not having anywhere else to go is what I can hear some people will be screaming at the TV or screaming at the screen today. It's like, where are the families in this? Where are the supporters? Where are the adults in these people's lives who could be offering them some sort of...
In some cases, some of the children, the young people that we care for, the parent essentially is the state. These are kids that have been uplifted from birth, have been in state care for most of their lives, and have experienced homelessness for most of their lives, and they have never had adequate care. The responsibility here sits on the government and on the Prime Minister to ensure that every child that is a ward of the state, that their parental responsibility is upheld and they are looked after. Now, for those kids that aren't within state care, there is often a lot of complexity. But the question we have to ask as New Zealand is, do we want to have this debate around who's responsible, or do we want to ensure that our children are housed and that they are looked after and they are inside rather than in the rain? And we can make the decision to ensure that all of our kids, all of our young people have a safe place to live and safe shelter over their heads when they are in a point of crisis, or we can argue about who's responsible.
I guess we don't get to choose who we're born to.